Take 2 steps forward if you grew up with your father in your household. Take 2 steps forward if you grew up with your father actively involved in your life. Take 1 step forward if your father provided emotional support. Take 1 step forward if your father supported your educational or career aspirations. Take 2 steps backward if your father created a toxic environment at home. Take 2 steps backwards if you had to be the man of the house. Take 2 steps backwards if your father's actions negatively impacted your sense of self-worth. Take a step forward if you could call your father right now. Take a step forward if your father demonstrated love and affection continuously. Take a step forward if you had regular, meaningful conversations with your father. Take a step forward if your father provided emotional support and guidance. Take a step backward if you felt neglected or ignored by your father.
If you just look around, you'll just see how each of us had different relationships with our father. And the purpose of this was just for the world to see and for each other to see like how we all come from different circumstances. But nevertheless, we all are successful. We didn't let us having our father there or not having our father there impact or affect how we chose to grow as individuals and how we chose to make things happen. Because some people, they'll look at it and use that as an excuse. Like, I'm still back here and you guys are all the way up there. But it didn't change how I look at life. It didn't change my outlook on myself and my self-worth. So I do want people to do this exercise and take this exercise and use it and look at it like, okay, if Milan had this circumstances and she still became successful and she still look at life and she's still optimistic about everything, I can do the same thing too. If Alex was able to create the energy and grow a multi-million-dollar brand without his father, I can do that too. It doesn't negate the fact that he probably feel a certain way about his father, but he didn't let those feelings overpower and overshadow him from becoming the man that he is today. So that was the purpose of this exercise.
All right. I want to ask you guys, like, what was your relationship like with your father, Ikene?
Yeah, my father was a great man. I think the day he was buried last year on the 9th of April, a lot of people called him a great man. But when you also look at certain things in the house, he had a lot of shortcomings, which I understand now of his shortcomings. But before, I would say in my teen life, I was at many times mad at my dad for so many things, that transpired, which means his shortcomings maybe financially, but in terms of advice, he was a great man. He gave me so many advice that I am glad that Obama wasn't my father. I am glad that Bill Gates is not my father. I am glad that so many men out there are not my father, that my father is my father. If I'm to come to this world again all over, to a to a man that doesn't really have that much financially, I will still come back through my dad. I pray to God I will come back through him because you know why? He was a great man. So, one thing that we don't understand when we're younger is that we think that our fathers are supposed to be omnipotent, omnipresent, that they're supposed to provide everything without questions asked. And then we forget that this is just one man with all this pressure. He didn't create this world. He came to this world just like we came. He was born into it. He grew up just like we grew up. He had all disappointments through his own father, just like we had through him. He's still a human being. So my father I remember like so many times that I would go through a lot of things as a child. He would call me and talk to me. He never hit me for one day. My mom hit the crap out of me every day, but my dad never touched me for one day. But he was more impactful in my life because of his teachings, his guidance. I learned from his shortcomings because his shortcomings are a blessing to me. So that's what it is. So he was a great man.
Okay. What about you, Hank? How was your relationship with your father?
I shared it before. Uh, it wasn't financially. He was always there, and even when my mother and father was married, he was like distance. It just was like he just was not emotionally there, and so I seen where it comes from because I was able to. My grandfather lived long enough where I was able to meet him, so I understood where it came from and why where he learned it from, because his father wasn't like that. So it's understood why it happened. Uh, for years, I used to envy when I was a kid when I didn't really understand how teammates, other schoolmates, and other people who had fathers, I would see them and I would just be envious of them, jealous of them, bitter, because I didn't have it. I didn't have that opportunity to have my father in my life like they was getting. Like when your father needs you for when you financially struggling, or just going through some shit and you just need somebody to talk to. I didn't have that. I couldn't just pick the phone up and do that, or at least I felt like I couldn't. Uh, if it wasn't for my father figures like my grandfather and my uncle, who is my dad's brother, ironically, who was always there for me, gave me opportunities, poured into me, going to his barbershop. He had a barbershop and he would cut hair and I would go over and clean up, hang out. Sometimes when I'm not even working clean up, I just hang out because I ain't got shit better to do, nowhere else to go. If I was going somewhere, I was being in the street doing some trouble, and he seen that the path I was about to go down, and so he seen his nephew doing that, and he poured into me, brought me in, and was teaching his education. I mean, just on Mondays, he's coming out to the country, man, and just sitting us down after his last haircut, and he's just pouring into us. You know what I'm saying? Kicking us knowledge, man. And even when I stayed with my mom, I would go over his shop on during the week, and he would just educate it. And other elders there would just pour into me and just teach me and be mentors me. Taught me how to be a man, how to operate, how to act, how to carry yourself. Those two individuals was a big influence in my life. And I seen that and I learned from that. Now, I have a cordial relationship with my father now. We talk, we interact, we have fun. We, like I said, we text, and he's engaged with with his grandkids, which is my son and my daughter. He's involved, and I appreciate that. I wish I had. I'm jealous of them because I ain't had what y'all said, man. Look, y'all blessed. That's all I'm saying. This the dude right here, I don't know this dude. Y'all do. I don't know him, but I do appreciate what he's doing now. Now, there's other forces behind why it happened. I'm not going to get into that, but a father's very important. And every time I see a father doing what he needs to be doing as a man, I make sure I give him props, regardless of what it is. Because the world don't do that for us. We know this past June, a couple weeks ago, we see no commercial for fathers. If you did, it's probably goddamn Home Depot commercial, or somewhere you could buy a damn tie. Shout out to JR for having his Father's Day gifts he was giving out. Assured man. Shout out to them. But for the most part, there's not a lot of publicity and advertisement for fathers. For some reason, I don't know why. We're just not getting the props that we deserve. And do we deserve props? Yeah, we want to be appreciated. Nobody say you got to do it all the time, but we want to be appreciated. You know what I'm saying, JR? So, you know, I was at my son's game, and I keep talking about it. I was ready to leave. You know, my son said, "Daddy, I love you." You know, he didn't have to do that. He's in front of his boys, in front of his teammates, in front of other people. But he just went. He's not embarrassed to say that. Why? Because I poured that into him. Because you know, I would embarrass you. I love you, son. I love you. And I used to make him say. I say it about 3 or 4 times, and he would mumble, "I love you, Dad." I can't hear you. What'd you say? But now it's just like second nature. No problem. Because I want my son to know that he loves. I want my daughter knows that he loves. I want my granddaughter knows that I love him. And there's nothing wrong to hear "I love you" from a man. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less of a man because you tell your kids you love them. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. And I heard you mention, you say your father wasn't around. So did you have a role inside your house with your mom? Like, were you the man of the house?
I spent more time with my grandparents because my grandfather was a father figure in my life that I needed. My mom couldn't handle me. I was bad, JR. I wasn't shit as a kid. So, and she had 2 of them. So there's no way my mom could handle 2 young boys, you know. So I spent more time with my grandmother than my mom.
Okay.